All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, the Spiritual Seek's Spiritual Awakening Test.
Oh, yeah, they always have such thought-provoking stuff.
I know, right? For this deep dive, we've got the test itself, of course, and a really interesting article that kind of breaks down the meaning behind each question.
It's like getting a peek behind the curtain.
Exactly. So have you ever wondered, where you are on your spiritual awakening journey?
It's a question we all ask ourselves at some point, right?
Well, this test and the article, they give us some pretty amazing insights.
Definitely.
So first things first, a little background on the Spiritual Seek.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them, but for anyone who's not,
They're all about helping people get to know themselves better, on a deeper level.
it's like that whole know thyself thing from ancient Greece.
Exactly. And this test, it's like one of their tools for that self-discovery.
Cool.
Okay, so let's jump into the test description. There's a section called What is Soul Awakening?
This sounds intriguing.
It is. It talks about how awareness and awakening, they kind of go hand in hand.
Like one leads to the other?
Yeah, you can't really have one without the other.
Makes sense.
And then it gets into this idea of awakening as a manifestation of consciousness.
Whoa, that's deep.
I know, right? Basically, it's saying that our soul, it wants to transcend the material world.
So it's not just about our physical bodies.
Not at all. It's about something bigger, something beyond the physical.
Interesting.
And then there's this section called From Materiality to Spirituality.
Okay, so we're going even deeper now.
We are. And this is where things get really interesting.
I'm all ears.
So it starts off by saying that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
So we're not just humans, we're something more.
Exactly. And sometimes our bodies, they can feel like a prison to our souls.
Like our souls are trapped in this physical form.
Yeah, and it says our soul, it doesn't understand things like birth or death.
That makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. And then it talks about awakening as a moment when our minds, they kind of give way to this multidimensional part of us.
Oh, multidimensional.
It's almost like, imagine a balloon, right? And inside the balloon is this vast multidimensional space. But the balloon itself, that's our mind.
Okay, I think I'm getting it.
And as we awaken, the balloon starts to expand, and we get glimpses of that incredible space inside.
So it's about expanding our awareness beyond the limits of our minds.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then there's this final section in the description called Acknowledging Earthly Illusions.
Okay, what illusions are they talking about?
Well, it starts off by saying that everyone's spiritual awakening, it's subjective. Like, no two journeys are exactly the same.
Yeah, that makes sense. We all have our own unique experiences.
But even though it's subjective, there are still some shared stages that people go through.
Okay, so what are some of those shared stages?
One of the big ones is disillusionment, like a reevaluation of everything you thought you knew.
So it's about questioning those assumptions we've been carrying around.
Yes. And this is where it gets really interesting.
I'm hooked. Tell me more.
The article says that an awakened one, they've kind of transcended that automatic pilot of the mind.
Automatic pilot.
Have you ever felt like you were just going through the motions? Like you weren't fully present in your life?
Oh, yeah, totally. Especially when I'm super busy.
Well, that's kind of what they're talking about, that automatic pilot. It's like we're not really conscious of our thoughts and actions.
And awakening is about becoming aware of that autopilot.
And breaking free from it.
Wow, powerful stuff.
It is. And that's just the introduction to the test. I'm so excited to go through each question.
Me too. They always have such insightful questions.
Okay, so question number 1, it jumps right in. It says, regarding your family, have you ever perceived yourself as a black sheep?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And this one falls under the sphere of detachment.
Detachment. How does that relate to family?
That's what I thought too. But when you think about it, awakening is about becoming more individual, more independent.
So maybe feeling like the black sheep means you're starting to think for yourself.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that your truth might be different from your family's truth.
That can be tough though, right? Like breaking away from those family expectations.
It can be, but the article, it talks about how it's not about rebelling against your family.
It's more about finding your own path.
Yeah, it's about developing your own inner compass, as the Spiritual Seek puts it.
I like that. Inner compass.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 2 builds on this idea of detachment. It asks, if you had more money and goods than your current state, your life would be.
Okay, now we're talking about money.
Yeah, and how it relates to spiritual awakening.
That's an interesting connection.
It is, and the article suggests that people who are more spiritually awakened, they often find fulfillment beyond material wealth.
So it's not about being rich or poor.
It's about recognizing that true happiness, it comes from within, not from external things.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely fallen into that trap of thinking, if I just had this one thing, then I'd be happy.
We've all been there.
But the spiritual seek, they're saying that's an illusion.
Like those material things, they can't truly fulfill us.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next?
All right, question 3 is, staying with the concept of freedom, what makes you feel free? They're really digging deep into this idea of freedom.
Yeah, it's like they're asking us to define what freedom truly means.
And the article, it challenges us to look at where we seek freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Is it from those external things like possessions?
Or is it something deeper, something inside of us?
That's exactly it. The spiritual seek emphasizes that true freedom, it comes from within, like liberating ourselves from limiting beliefs.
So it's about freeing ourselves from those internal chains.
Exactly.
Intense.
All right, next up is question 4. It asks, how do you stand in relation to the most popular and socially accepted habits, traditions, and ways of life?
That's a good one.
We're still in the realm of detachment, so I'm sensing a theme here.
Like detaching from societal norms.
Yes. As we awaken, we might start questioning those traditions and habits that we just took for granted.
Yeah, like why do we do things this way?
Exactly. And it's not about rebelling just to rebel. It's about making conscious choices.
The spiritual seek is all about that, conscious choice.
Yes. Okay, this next one, I think a lot of people will relate to. Question 5 says, to build a better world, one must continue to struggle with perseverance and confidence. What's your opinion?
Whoa.
That's deep.
It is, right. It gets into some pretty heavy philosophical territory.
Yeah, like how do we actually create change in the world?
And the spiritual seek, they offer a perspective that's kind of counterintuitive.
Oh, I'm curious.
They suggest that trying to force change through external struggle, it might not be the most effective approach.
So it's not about fighting against what we don't like.
They're saying it's more about changing ourselves first.
Like becoming the change we want to see.
Exactly. And by shifting our own consciousness, we can inspire others to change too.
That's a powerful idea. It is. Okay, question 6 takes a bit of a darker turn.
Oh.
It says, choose the statement that best describes your relationship with death.
Wow. Yeah, you can't really talk about spiritual awakening without confronting death.
And the spiritual seek, they're highlighting how our view of death, it reveals a lot about our spiritual understanding.
So how we see death, it says something about where we are on our journey.
Exactly. Like if we're terrified of death, it might be because we're too attached to this physical world.
But if we understand that our souls are eternal,
Then death becomes less scary.
it's more like a transition.
Yeah, a natural part of life.
Yeah.
This has been so thought-provoking already.
I know, right? And we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for question 7?
Hit me with it.
All right. It asks, what is it that drives you to try to improve yourself? And this one falls under the disillusionment sphere.
Disillusionment and self-improvement. That seems kind of contradictory.
Right. You'd think self-improvement is a good thing, right?
Yeah, like who doesn't want to be better?
Well, the article says it's not about whether self-improvement is good or bad.
It's more about the motivation behind it.
Exactly. Like, why do we feel the need to improve?
So are they saying that some motivations are like more spiritually aligned than others?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
They suggest that if we're driven by, say, a deep desire to grow, to become more aligned with our true selves.
And that could be a powerful catalyst for awakening.
Yes. But on the flip side, if we're driven by fear, insecurity, like a need to please others.
Then it might actually be holding us back.
Right, because then it's not really about our growth. It's about external validation.
So it's like we're trying to fit into someone else's mold.
Exactly. So it's important to really check in with ourselves, you know?
What's truly driving our desire to improve?
Yeah. Are we seeking genuine transformation or just trying to win someone's approval?
That's deep, man.
It is. Okay, question 8. This one's a bit of a mind bender. It asks, have you ever had the doubt that the world we live in is a big show, a kind of staging in which everyone plays a predefined role?
Whoa, that's getting into some Matrix territory.
Right. It makes you question everything.
And it's still under disillusionment.
Yeah, because it's about seeing through the illusions, right?
So are they saying that the world is fake? Like we're all just actors in some cosmic play?
Not necessarily.
Okay, I'm even more confused now.
It's more about questioning the narratives we've been told, you know? Like, are we really seeing things clearly? Or are we just buying into the story that society has given us?
Like the story that we have to go to school, get a job, buy a house, have 2.5 kids.
Exactly. It's about questioning those assumptions and asking ourselves, is this really what I want?
Is this really what life is all about?
Yeah, it can be a pretty disillusioning experience to realize that things might not be as they seem.
But it can also be liberating, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
It's like once you see the Matrix, you can't unsee it.
Exactly. And that's part of the awakening process.
Cool. What's next?
Okay. Question 9 brings us back down to earth a bit. It asks, can a person please everyone and be sincere at the same time?
That's a tough one.
It is, right? Like, we all want to be liked, but we also want to be true to ourselves.
So how do you balance those two things?
That's the question. And the article talks about how constantly trying to please everyone, it can lead us to compromise our own values.
Like we end up saying yes to things we don't really want to do.
Or we pretend to be someone we're not, just to fit in.
And that's not authentic, is it?
Not at all. It's about finding that sweet spot, you know, where we can be kind and compassionate.
But also set healthy boundaries.
Yes. And prioritize our own well-being.
Okay, question 10. This one's a biggie. It asks, what does the expression spiritual awakening mean to you?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
I know, right? It's so open-ended.
And there's no one right answer because everyone's experience is different.
So how does the spiritual seek define it?
They describe it as a process of expanding consciousness.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
It's about becoming more aware of ourselves, of the world around us, of our connection to everything.
And it's not a one-time thing, right? It's an ongoing journey.
Exactly. It's about constantly evolving, growing, transforming.
I like that.
Me too. Okay, ready for question 11?
Bring it on.
All right. It says, continuing on the topic of beliefs, ideas, and interpretations. How do you get an idea? And this one is still under disillusionment.
So we're still in that questioning mode.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This question, it makes you think about where your ideas come from.
Like, are we just absorbing information passively?
Or are we actively engaging with it, challenging it, forming our own opinions?
So it's about developing those critical thinking skills.
Exactly. It's about becoming more discerning, you know?
Especially in today's world, where we're bombarded with information from all sides.
We need to be able to filter through all that noise and figure out what resonates with us.
What's true for us.
Yes. And question 12 builds on this idea of critical thinking. It asks, have you ever completely revised certain beliefs ideas you had before?
Interesting.
It's about being open to change, right? Like, our beliefs, they're not set in stone.
They can evolve as we grow.
Exactly. And the article points out that it's actually a sign of strength to be able to change your mind.
To admit that you were wrong about something.
Yeah, because clinging to those outdated beliefs, it can really hold us back.
From growing and evolving.
Precisely. Okay, question 13 takes a bit of a political turn. It asks, speaking of acting, how do you see the theater of politics?
Ooh, interesting.
Right. It's like they're asking us to look at politics through a different lens.
And it's still under disillusionment.
Yeah, because politics can be pretty disillusioning, can't it?
Oh, for sure. Especially when you see all the corruption and hypocrisy.
But this question, it's not just about complaining about politics.
It's about becoming more aware of how the system works.
And how we can participate in it in a more conscious way.
Okay, I'm ready for a change of pace.
Me too. We're moving into the inconvenience sphere now.
Inconvenience, what's that all about?
It's about those things that challenge our comfort zones, you know?
Like those things we resist even when we know they're good for us.
Exactly. And question 14 jumps right in with, does the idea of having to change your habits upset you?
That's a good one to reflect on.
Because change can be scary, right?
Okay.
Even positive change.
Oh yeah, totally. We get so attached to our routines, even when they're not serving us anymore.
It's like we'd rather stay stuck in our comfort zones than face the unknown.
But growth requires change, doesn't it?
It does. And this question, it's about assessing our willingness to embrace that change.
To step outside of our comfort zones and see what's possible.
Exactly. Okay, question 15 is a bit of a thought experiment. It says, a life without is not worth living. What word would you put in place of the question marks?
Whoa, that's deep.
It is, right? It
Yeah.
really makes you think about your values, your priorities.
Like what's truly important to you.
Yes. And the article says that our answer can reveal a lot about our inner landscape.
So what are some possible answers?
Well, if someone says love, it might indicate that they prioritize connection and relationships.
What about freedom?
That could suggest a strong desire for autonomy and independence.
Interesting. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a reflection of what we value most.
Exactly. Okay, question 16 asks, which type of society do you prefer among those described below? It's like they're giving us a glimpse into different ways of living.
And asking us to choose the one that resonates with us most.
Yeah, and the options they give, they're all about simplicity, sustainability, community.
Like a more conscious way of living.
Exactly. And the article suggests that people who are more spiritually awakened, they tend to be drawn to these kinds of societies.
Societies that prioritize connection over competition.
And well-being over material wealth.
Okay, question 17 brings us back to the here and now. It asks, what kind of relationship do you have with technology?
That's a relevant one.
Isn't it? Technology is such a big part of our lives these days.
And this question, it's making us think about how it's impacting us.
Like, is it helping us or hindering us?
Right, because technology can be a double-edged sword, can it?
It can connect us to the world, but it can also distract us from what's important.
And the article cautions against using technology as a crutch, you know?
Like, to avoid dealing with our emotions or connecting with ourselves?
Exactly. It's about using technology mindfully rather than letting it control us.
Okay, question 18 challenges a common assumption. It says, the car is an instrument of freedom. Do you agree with that?
That's an interesting one.
Because we often associate cars with freedom, right? Like the open road, adventure.
But the article makes the point that cars can also be a symbol of confinement.
Like we spend so much time stuck in traffic.
Trapped in our little metal boxes.
And dependent on this whole system of roads and infrastructure.
So it's asking us to rethink our relationship with cars.
And to consider alternative ways of moving through the world.
Ways that are more sustainable, more connected to our environment.
Okay, question 19 asks, do you ever feel the need for more simplicity?
Simplicity, that's a good one.
And it's still under inconvenience.
Yeah, because simplifying our lives, it can be pretty inconvenient, can it?
It requires us to let go of things, to declutter, to resist the temptation to accumulate more.
But the article suggests that true happiness doesn't come from having more stuff.
It comes from being content with what we have.
And from focusing on what truly matters.
Okay, question 20 asks, have you ever felt a strong discomfort in doing things that everyone usually does?
That's a great question. It speaks to the experience of being different, of not quite fitting in.
And how that can be both challenging and liberating.
Exactly. Because it forces us to question the status quo and to create our own path.
All right, we're shifting gears now into the symptomatology sphere.
Symptomatology. That sounds a bit medical.
It is. This section is all about those physical and emotional symptoms that can accompany spiritual awakening.
Okay, I'm curious.
Question 21 asks, have you ever found yourself observing things and people as if you were not part of the context?
Interesting.
Like feeling detached from reality?
Yeah, like you're watching a movie instead of being in it.
Exactly. And the article says that this detachment, it can be a common symptom of awakening.
Because it allows us to see things from a different perspective.
Like we're stepping outside of the matrix.
I like that analogy. Okay, question 22 is a beautiful one. It asks, some people feel homesickness, but not for an earthly place. How about you?
That's such a poetic way to describe that feeling.
It is, right. It's like a longing for something more, something beyond this physical world.
Like a soul-level homesickness.
Yes, it's a yearning for a place we've never been, but that feels familiar somehow.
Like we're searching for our true home.
Exactly. Okay, question 23 is a bit provocative. It says, some people appear dull, as if they were flesh robots. Others have a divine spark in their eyes. What do you think about that?
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is, right. But it's not about judging people.
It's more about recognizing different levels of consciousness.
Exactly. Some people are just going through the motions, while others are more awake, more alive.
Okay, question 24 lightens the mood a bit. It asks, have you ever dreamed of flying?
Oh, I love that question.
Me too. It's so whimsical.
And the article says that dreams of flying, they can symbolize freedom, transcendence.
Like our souls are yearning to break free from limitations.
Exactly. Okay, question 25 gets into some of the physical sensations that can accompany awakening. It asks, having an insight and simultaneously feeling tingles and pressure on your head, has this ever happened to you?
Interesting.
It's not uncommon for people to experience physical symptoms during awakening.
Like our bodies are trying to keep up with the changes happening in our minds and spirits.
Exactly. It can be anything from headaches and tingling to changes in energy levels.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, question 26 asks, looking back on your past, have there ever been any major changes in the way you are?
That's a good one for reflection.
Because sometimes it's easy to forget how much we've changed over time.
It's like we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
But this question, it's inviting us to look back and see how far we've come.
And to appreciate the journey.
Okay, last one. Question 27 asks, have you ever experienced some of these symptoms under normal health conditions? Which ones? You can choose up to 4 items.
So they're giving us a list of symptoms and asking us to check off any that we've experienced.
And this is where we can really start to connect the dots, right?
Yeah, like how do our own experiences relate to this whole concept of spiritual awakening?
All right, that's all 27 questions. That was quite a ride.
It was. And it's just the beginning, you know? The real work starts after we've taken the test and started to integrate these insights into our lives.
That's a good point. So what happens next? Like, how do we make sense of all this?
Well, they have this whole scoring system. It gives you some insight into like where you're at on your spiritual journey.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about answering the questions. It's like you get a result.
Yeah, but it's not like a pass or fail thing. It's more about understanding like your current stage of development.
Okay, so it's like a guide, not a judgment.
Exactly. They really emphasize that, you know, like
Yeah.
don't just rush through the test or try to pick the right answers.
It's about being honest with yourself.
Yeah. They even have like a foreword and some warnings in the test,
What are those about?
just reminding you to like approach it with genuine self-reflection.
It's no cheating.
Exactly. Be authentic, even if it's uncomfortable.
That makes sense. All right, so let's say I've taken the test. I've been super honest with myself. What do the different scores mean?
Okay, so they break it down into 3 main categories. If you score between 0 and 56, it suggests you're like at the beginning of your spiritual journey.
So a low score doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Not at all. It just means you might be more focused on the material world, or maybe you haven't really started exploring your spiritual side yet.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Then there's the middle range, 57 to 75.
What does that indicate?
That means your consciousness is active, you're on the right path, you know, you're questioning things, seeking deeper meaning, probably experiencing some of those shifts in perception we talked about.
So you're awake, but maybe not fully awakened yet.
Yeah, something like that.
And what about the highest scores?
All right, if you score between 76 and 110, you're a true seeker. You're deeply introspective, constantly questioning, probably going through some pretty profound transformations.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It can be, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
So it's like a specter of awakening from beginner to like advanced.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about comparing yourself to others.
It's about understanding your own unique journey.
Precisely.
So after spending all this time with the Spiritual Seeks test, what's like the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important message is that spiritual awakening, it's a journey, not a destination.
It's not like you reach enlightenment and then you're done.
Right. It's about continuous growth, self-discovery, and aligning with your true self, you know, day after day.
It's a lifelong process.
Exactly.
Well said. If this deep dive has, like, sparked your curiosity, I definitely encourage you to check out the Spiritual Seeks website, maybe even take the test yourself.
And remember, approach it with an open mind and a genuine desire to learn more about yourself.
It's all about self-discovery. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I always learn so much from these deep dives with you.
Me too. It's amazing how exploring these, like, big questions can lead to such profound insights.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder your own journey of awakening. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.